Hi guys, in this tutorial we show you how to make the sun base. Keep in mind that this is not properly rendered out, this is still in Blender, and it also has a procedural element here which looks like this. And obviously if you had a faster PC it wouldn't look so jaggedy, it would look a lot smoother. But yeah, let's get into making this. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. In my last tutorial, I showed you how to make this procedural oil texture. If you haven't watched this video, the link is in the description down below. It is a requirement in order for you to follow along with this video. The last thing you want to do here, once you've made your oil texture, is that you want to save this somewhere where you can find it. It's very important. Once you've done that, we can start from the beginning. First thing you want to do with this default cube is go to the modifier properties, add modifier, and I'm going to add a subdivision, and I'm going to chuck both these on 6. Once you've done that, we're going to add another modifier, and it's going to be a cast modifier. The default is circle, which is perfect. We just need to increase the factor to 1. And if you want to see what it does, let's just zoom in here, press numpad 1. See, it doesn't look 100% round. So what we can do is we just increase the factor to 1. Now it's the perfect sphere, literally that easy. And it's also a quad sphere, obviously, because we're using quads. Right, the next thing we want to do is just set up our scene. First thing we want to do is lift this up here. We are going to change this to our shader editor. And we probably want another window open over here. Let's bring it open a little bit more. Let's turn this on render view. And we can make it a little bit smaller. And once you've got this set up, first thing we want to do is delete the principled BSDF. Press Shift A. We're going to go to the shader and we're going to use an emission texture because when you're dealing with the sun, it's got to be an emission. And just like that, we can see how it looks. It's looking pretty good. And because we are in space, I'm also going to go to the world editor and just let's make it black. That's much better. Right. The next thing you want to do is that we need to append the files we did in the previous save file. So you want to press File, go down to Append, and wherever you saved it, I saved mine on my desktop, I believe. I called it Oil Foundations Space. Click on that and click Append. Then you'll get this menu here, and what you've got to look for is your node tree. Click on that. And everything in your node tree, these are all your fake users. Everything in your node tree, we're just going to click Append. And if you followed the previous tutorial correctly, everything else should be fairly straightforward here on out. So now we can press Shift A, and if you go to groups, we'll have all those nodes we had in our previous tutorial. We'll have access to them here, which is great. All right, now all we need to do is press Shift A. We're going to go to the group, and we're going to use our oil node. And we're going to connect our factor here. Pardon me. There we go. It may take a little while to load, but that's looking good. And we can also press Shift A and we can type in color ramp. Chuck that in there. And if we want this to be just a little bit more pronounced, we'd bring these two in like this so we can see better, and that's looking pretty good. And then we're going to press Shift A, input, texture coordinate, and we're going to click connect it to an object vector. And that is looking pretty good. Let's bring this out like this. The next thing we want to do is select both these, press Shift D, put them over here, press Shift A, and we need to type in mix. And we want to use a mix RGB, and we'll connect this, zoom in, we'll connect this in like that. Let's take a quick look, and we're going to adjust these settings shortly. It's looking good. Alright, so we can play around with some of these settings here. Let's, for example, if you want to see what this specific one does, as you know, you can just press Ctrl Shift click, and it will take a little while to load. And let's make this 9. But to be frank, it's actually more visible if we just do this Control-Shift-Click. On the emission, it may take a little while to load. Apologies, I have what you call a potato PC that I work with. And we could probably leave the detail on 5. Let's maybe increase the distortion to 0.7. And maybe increase the oil size to 1.5. And you can kind of just play around with these settings as to what you think is appropriate. And maybe increase the amount to 0.3. And once you're done with these ones, you can go down here and you can play with these. And obviously you probably want these to be different. Maybe make the distortion 1.5. Make the scale, I don't know, 4. And make the oil size 0.8. And make the amount 0.35. So it's different. And while it loads, we will wait. And that's looking pretty good in my opinion. Next thing we want to do is we want to connect these texture coordinates to a specific object. So all we need to do now is press, let's create a new collection. I'm going to call this collection, rename it, double click. Computer's so slow, it's struggling to, there we go. Texture coordinates. And what we'll use for texture coordinates, we'll press Shift A. We'll go down all the way to our empties and we'll use a plane axis. I'll zoom out, I'll press G, X, and I'll bring it out to about, let's say -10, click. And what I'll do is I will also press Control A, apply all, Control Z, sorry. Let's leave it there and we'll press Shift D to duplicate and right click. Now we've got 2 empties. So we're going to name them texture coordinate setup, and we'll name the other one texture coordinate lever. And obviously you adjust it with the lever, but you set it up on the setup one. And we won't worry about that just yet. We'll click back on our cube, which we can rename. Once you double click, it may take a little while to register. Let's try that again. Oh my goodness. Computer is struggling. Type in sun. Let's create a new collection for our sun, which I'll maybe call this hero object. And we'll chuck our sun into our hero object. I'm quite happy with that. And if you wanted, you could add these texture coordinates into your hero object as a folder within the folder, which would probably be more accurate, but I don't want to do that for this tutorial. Right, so we want to go over here and we want to connect our texture coordinate setup. It may take a little while to register. And there we go. And now we want to select the other object, which is the texture coordinate lever. And nothing will really change just yet. And that's perfectly fine. Perfect. Right, now the next thing we want to do is hover your mouse in this menu here, press N, select your texture coordinate setup, and hover over the location of the Z-axis, and all you need to do is right click and click add driver. Once you've added a driver, you can go from shader to drivers. You can select your Z location, hover over here, press N and click on drivers. Once you've selected drivers, you want to connect it to your lever, and you want to say that this needs to be affected by, let's say, one lever is affected by the Z location. So you could make it affected by the Z location and make it negative, but just for I'm just going to leave it on the X location because that's perfect. Which means when we select, we won't be able to mess with our setup, but we could mess with this over here, and we could press G, X, and you can see the different shapes forming on our sun. But where is this coordinate here? Zoom out. Oh, it's all the way down there. Wow. Well, when you select this, GX, oh, that's why. That moves like that. So you could move them both by moving this to the lever on the X-axis, or you could decide to press GZ and only move the one axis for a slightly different effect, which is quite interesting. So now that this connection is set up, we can click on our sun again. We're going to go back to our shader editor, and it would make sense to select all of this. So select all of it and press Shift P with your mouse in the section here, and we're going to label this high frequency, and that's looking pretty good. Next thing you want to do is select all of this again, press Shift D. It may take a while to load if you've got a potato PC. Give your PC a chance to think. There we go, and then just chuck this up here perfectly. This time with this selected, we can rename this low frequency, and we should be set. Now there's a few things we want to change here. We're going to get rid of the oil texture. We're going to press Control X. We're going to press Shift A, and we're going to input a texture, a Voronoi texture, and we'll chuck that in there, and we'll connect the object over here, and we will connect the distance into the factor. And you see what this is doing. I'm going to hover over this, and I press Control, Shift click. You can see how it looks. If you increase the scale, if you decrease the scale, I'm going to leave it on 5 for now. I'm quite happy with that. And I think that looks pretty good. But then we're also going to delete the oil texture over here. Click on this, Shift D, bring this down here, connect the object to the vector, and connect the distance to color 2. And we can select this, Control Shift click, and we can see how it looks. And possibly just for the sake of being different, let's choose 2 different ones, 0.5, just so it's different. Now obviously the factor, if you go 100% this way, it's color 1, 100% the other way, it's color 2. But we'll leave this on 0.5 because it's quite a decent distribution. All right. There's one more thing we want to add here. If we press Shift A, we go back to groups. One of the groups we've brought in here is called vector noise, and that's from the previous tutorial. If you can just drop it in over here. And we can press Shift A again, group, vector noise, drop it in over here as well. And you probably want them to be different amounts so that there's more variation. So for example, we might say we want this to be 9, and we want the distortion to be 0.7, and the amount, I don't know, 0.3. If we increase the amount, see, it's such a cool effect. Right, that should be fine. And then we go down here, and we would say we probably want, if that is 0.3, let's make this 0.5. Let's make the distortion 1.5. And maybe leave the scale as is, and that's looking pretty good. And you can kind of choose your own settings here. It's really hard to mess this up or go wrong once you've set this up. If you want to name this the full thing, low frequency noise. And the other group that we got here is your high frequency noise. Now that we've set up your low frequency noise and your high frequency noise, obviously one of the things we probably want to do is, X, delete that, is to connect them. And the way we connect them is to the let's connect the emission quickly, just so that that's connected to the surface. There we go. There we go. So now we can just add a Shift A, search, mix RGB, and we're going to be using quite a lot of these. Where did that go? Okay, I lost that. Shift A, mix RGB, connected into here. May take a little while to load. And I believe we want this one to be on color 1, because that's a low frequency, and the high frequency has to be colored too, if I'm not mistaken. We'll test it out now once it loads up. There's quite a lot happening here. It will eventually come around. Okay, cool. So let's play with these settings here to see how our sun reacts. What happens if we adjust this? Just bring this back quickly. And just to make sure we didn't make a mistake, let's switch these just to see how it looks. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you get stuck anywhere in this process, please let me know. I will try and help to get you back on track. Right, so let's just play around with this quickly over here. So best way to see if it's working, let's change the oil size here. Well, this seems to be low frequency. It seems to be, well, let's confirm. Okay, I can see that. Then what does this do? No, it seems fine. Okay, cool. I'm quite happy with that. The next thing we want to do is add that, almost that halo thing around here. So once again, let's just lift these up over here. We are going to need another mix RGB node, and we can just select this one, press Shift D. One moment. PC has froze again. Why do I have that song stuck in my head? I have no idea. Alright, okay, cool. Let's try this again. Click on this mix RGB, press Shift D. And click there. There we go. Give it a little chance to load. And I think we need to change this to multiply. One day I'll get an upgrade. Sorry about this, guys. And let's just increase the factor. So we've got a mix RGB here that's, let's switch this to see what happens if we make this add. All right, now let's make this multiply. And we can increase the factor. And this, we probably want to make this add. Alright, so now we're going to press Shift A, input, texture coordinates, Shift A, then we're going to also add a, where is it, input, layer weight. We're going to connect the object to this, it should have no impact on this. I don't know why it's changing. Let's give it a minute. I think it just decided to freeze up again for no reason, because it's literally not connected to anything yet. I'm going to select this and press Ctrl-Shift-Click so we can see how it looks. Press Ctrl-Shift-Click again so it goes onto the faces, and then press Shift-A, Converter, Math, connect the math, and change this to power. And all we need to do is increase the power, I don't know, to, let's try 7. Let's take a look at that. And then we can press Shift A, search, color ramp, chuck it in here, and we can increase the intensity by adjusting this. Bring it all the way there, it's too much, but I don't know, something like that seems okay. A little bit less maybe. That's too much. I think maybe something like that should be fine. We could bring this in to make it very clear, but I think it actually looks a little bit better like that. And just use your own reference. And we are going to have to, oh, that's what happened by mistake. This is supposed to be on here. Ctrl-Shift-Click. Let that load. May take a little while. When you start messing with a bunch of nodes and you've got a slow computer, everything takes just a little bit longer to get done, but it's totally worth the end result. And now we can connect face. Okay, cool. Now we can connect this over here. And if we just look over here, this bottom one is connected to 1, and this one is connected to color 2. Just in case you can't see that so easily. Just thought I'd point that out. And the other thing I probably want to do, just this is personal preference, just to make it pop a bit more, maybe just bring the darks more in. So I can have a bit more contrast here. This is all about personal taste. If you want, this kind of effect. Oh, I quite like that. That looks pretty good. And you can decide what you think is good. And I guess the next step we probably want to do, let's just group this over here. Select everything. Shift P. Let's call this, is it called a halo? Not exactly. And I guess we can just call it edge highlight. And now we can mess with the color. So obviously we need to add the color before we adjust the emission. Once again, PC is stuck. Okay, cool. So first thing I'm going to do is select this over here, press Shift D, chuck it over here, change this to multiply again. As soon as your computer can catch up with what you're doing, and we're going to use multiply. May take a little while, but it will get there. And you can now choose a color. So we might decide that we want to make this extra bright, something like that, and maybe up the strength here to 2. And we can just move this over here, select this, Shift D, chuck this in over here, and change it from multiply to dodge when it eventually loads to make it pop even more. Color dodge, there we go. It may take its time, but it's worth it. And maybe just make this white. So I just go here in hex and I just type in F. Let me start over. It has to be 6 times, I believe. Hex is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Enter. And that should give the effect I want. Let's see if it worked. La, da, 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 da. La, da, da. All right, that seems to be working. And the only reason why it doesn't look like it's working, let's go over here. Here we go. Let's move this just a little bit away. We only want to dodge on the factor of our low and high frequency noises. Oh, this has changed to noise. That's no good. It's supposed to be high frequency noise. High frequency noise. There we go. And once we've done that, we can connect this color. It may take a little while to load if your computer's slow, like mine. There we go, into the factor, and that should be the final step. And I can just show you how the procedural animation works. And this is the base of the sun, the core of the sun. A few things I want to do just from personal preference while I'm here. I want this to be the richer. Just personal preference. And we can play around with this a little bit, but actually it looks fine. I guess one other thing we could do to make it pop is press Shift A, search, color, no, it's in our color settings. Let's press Shift A, color, RGB curves. Chuck that in there, and we just give this a nice angle once it registers. So you can see the difference. There we go. So all we need to do is lift this up like that. Give it a bit of a bend. That's looking good. And what happens if we make it? I'm trying to find a... Okay, that would probably be the most appropriate. And you could mess with this here and make it more red and all that, but I'm quite happy with how that looks. Yeah. Right, so all we really need to do now is go back to your texture coordinates and choose the lever. And you can press GX. And you can see the sun animation working quite beautifully, which is pretty awesome. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We will be taking this much further in the future. But yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We have made the sun. Let me just, because I need to have those two pop-ups to recommend other videos, I might as well change this quickly. Or make this large so we can see how it looks. Oh no, I hate it when that happens. Oh. Let's bring this down. Unfortunately, we will need to bring this up just a tad. Change this to 3D viewport. Select your texture lever. Hover your mouse over here and press by your numpad. Underneath numpad 3, there's that delete full stop. Press it full stop. It will take you straight to it. And if you press GX, you can move this. But let's just zoom in to get a nice, beautiful look at our sun. GX, a close up. And you can always mess with those nodes too if you don't like the texture and the oiliness or whatever the case may be. But yeah, this is pretty awesome. Once again, please don't forget to like and subscribe.